Now, the trauma for those personally affected by attacks like the one on London Bridge can stretch on for years after the event. In 2017, Conservative politician Tobias Ellwood helped perform first aid on fatally injured police officer Keith Palmer following the attack on Westminster and Westminster Bridge. He joins us now, as you can see. Hello to you. How did you react to the latest attack last Friday?
Well, again, I think like the nation did, just horrified that yet again we're seeing such a terrible event play out on one of our London bridges, but also seeing the incredible stoicism, the bravery, not just of our emergency response services, but individuals that just simply drop everything and say, we're not going to allow our life to be changed. We talk of this phrase, the first responders, normally those, the police, the fire service and the ambulance. Actually, it's just anybody who happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And what we saw again is people wanting to do absolutely the right thing and close this situation down immediately.
What's your advice to those that are caught up? I mean, we know, we've seen the images of what happened to you in 2017. Of course, your brother also died in the Bali bombings. You didn't realise the impact that it had had on your life for some time later.
I didn't. That's absolutely true. I'm actually not too keen to talk about it, but I've learned the hard way. I was Veterans Minister, I was Defence Minister, actually trying to reach out to veterans who have done amazing things, but perhaps a bit too stoic, a bit too brave, stubborn, if you like, to want to actually put their hand up and say there's something wrong with your mind. And this is, I think, applies to all of us. We're not scientists that understand how the brain works. We go to a doctor when there's a physical injury and they say, take it easy, take a few days off, sort yourself out. When it's something to do with our mind, we're less willing to come forward and say, might there be something wrong with me? The mind is awfully complex, as we're beginning to understand. And whether it's a car crash or a terrible incident such as this, every chance you probably will be affected in some way. And I would encourage anybody that saw this or is involved in any form of incident, just go and ask your doctor. Just ask some basic questions. It might help you in the longer term, because sometimes these things can incubate and then actually manifest themselves in a darker way later on in your life.
We call it PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. We think about it in relation to people who've served in the military, but it can impact people in all sorts of ways when they see perhaps an incident or whether they've been caught up in it.
Absolutely right, because we see it on the movies where incidents take place, but it doesn't happen in reality. It never happens in front of us. But when it does, it's an absolute shock. And we don't understand the shock to our brain, to how it will have an everlasting impact on it. So it's very, very important that you're willing to put your hand up. And that's the toughest thing to do. It may actually not be that recognise it. It might be somebody that's close to you, your family, your friends and so forth. So they have a duty, I would say, as well, to encourage anybody just to ask some questions and make sure people are OK.
What do you make of what some have described as the politicisation of the attack on Friday?
I'm very sorry that perhaps the conversation has gone down that road. I understand why questions are being asked of both the Labour Party, who is in government, and the Conservatives as well. There are many stakeholders involved, huge questions to ask. How did an appeal board actually manage to release this person? Why wasn't there even a probation service hearing to make sure that this person was safe to be released back into society? Why were there funding cuts taking place? How come we're not able to make sure that those on licence, we can track where they are? Difficult questions, all need to be answered, but I hope we don't see further politicisation of this particular incident, particularly so close to the aftermath.
Your government, your Prime Minister Boris Johnson is very quick to dive in and announce new policy on dealing with terrorists and violent criminals. Is that really the way that government should be making policy?
Well, we have to react to new circumstances. We've got to bear in mind that this is a very different form of threat than perhaps we're traditionally dealing with. Somebody that's willing to die for their cause, thinking that they're going to be rewarded for that murder that they actually take place. So it's a fast track to paradise. That is something that in Britain, and indeed the creation of Guantanamo Bay, if we go back to that after 9/11, it's something that the Western society has been hard to struggle with. Our judicial system isn't able to cope, even today as we see that. We try and rehabilitate. The two people that have been killed were people that were trying to actually help give this person a second life, and yet he wanted to kill. Now, we need to better understand the mindset there as to why somebody is like that, but also recognise that even if we kept this person in jail for 30 years, he would then be released. Would he still be a risk to society? And these are difficult questions that we need to answer.
But you acknowledge that it does appear to have been some sort of knee-jerk reaction from Boris Johnson. It's not something that's been in your manifesto.
No, it isn't. But also, I would defend the fact that when something new happens, we do absolutely, the nation would want us to react. But I agree with you that we have seen a politicisation a little bit of this horrible event. Mistakes were made, but from a number of stakeholders. But also, I would also say it's very, very difficult to recognise if anybody is going to go down this route. This is an individual who actually showed and proved, was proving, and very, very convincingly, to say that he was no threat to society. Now, we realise we need to learn from that to say that absolutely we need a better system. I think these people should be isolated. I don't think they should be in the general prison population, for example. That's a recommendation that was made, because even if you keep them in prison, they can actually then sow their poison, they can actually try and promote their cause to others. And this is the bigger challenge that I think we're facing. In the aftermath of dealing with the caliphate in Iraq, we still have tens of thousands of people just like Usman Khan who want to take life. And yet we have no plan to deal with that. What we've actually seen is these people, because of Turkey invading North Syria, is actually these people now being handed over to the Syrians. That doesn't conclude this. That doesn't conclude the fact that we are in a very difficult chapter at the moment, the last 10, 15 years, since 9/11, where there remain people who take a peaceful religion and it's turned around to cause difficulties and harm to Western society.
We need to talk about that in much more detail. Sadly, we are out of time, but do come back and talk to us in more detail after the election, if you would. Tobias Ellwood, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Appreciate it.